To fully appreciate this movie, you have to understand the context of the times in which it was made. Early 1970s, coming out of the 1960s, the civil rights struggle, the struggle that produced the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and the Fair Housing Act of 1968. There was a violent reaction in white America, some parts of white America, to this progress that we experienced. And that reaction, coupled with the transition from Martin Luther King and Whitney Young to civil rights leaders who lost their lives during that time, to H. Rap Brown and Stokely Carmichael, black activists who had no stomach for nonviolence, to someone like Leroy Jones, who made the transition from Leroy Jones the poet to Amari Baraka, the black activist, black nationalist, the man who wrote, "What time is it?" and then answered, "It's nation time."
There is no way that the United States can police the world and keep us on our ass too unless we cooperate.
Before there was The Spook Who Sat by the Door, the movie, there was The Spook Who Sat by the Door, the book, which was in limited distribution because few publishing houses would even consider putting it out for people to read. It was difficult to access and very few people got to read it, but somehow the message got out that it existed, that this story was there, a story of aggressive response to white oppression. And that story somehow became a movie.
We are going to get our own. Stop begging for crumbs.
How?
What we got now is a colony. But what we want to create is a new nation.
This movie had a message that in the early 1970s scared the hell out of white folks. It was a message that said to black people, you can resist, you can respond, you need not just simply take it on one cheek and turn the other cheek. We must find an aggressive way to respond to our oppression. The movie's aggression was that of violence. And it is not anything that Sam Greenlee advocated in a real world fashion. He held this out in a fictional way as a response to white oppression. He understood, however, that this was not a real option, but he wanted to present in his book and in the movie a context in which those who lived that life of oppression in the ghetto could connect with. It's difficult to tell how people will be moved by this. If you see it merely as entertainment, probably not much at all. But if you accept it as the message movie it was meant to be, as the protest film it was intended to be, I think a lot of people will enjoy it as a film and also come away with a heightened sense of awareness about themselves, about the struggles of our people, and about the need for us to come together to move our agenda forward. Is the answer a violent revolution? Of course it isn't. And it wasn't what Sam Greenlee had in mind. But it certainly is that the answer can be one of a stepped up effort on the part of black folks to take charge of our lives, as the main character in the movie does, to take charge of our community, as the forces that he assembled did in Chicago and in other cities around the country, to get control of our situation in such a way that we can become the movers and the shakers, and not just those who are left to respond to the wills and the whims of others.
I wrote the book in 1966, and the film was made in '73. And here we are 30 years later, And I think it's every bit as powerful, if not more so, than it was when I first did it. Oh man, it was an adventure. I enjoyed every minute of it. You know, a lot of people would have shriveled up and blown away. But man, I was exhilarated. I'd go home and go to bed and wake up vibrating. Because we never knew on Thursday whether we could meet payroll on Friday. We had to shoot it guerrilla style because that was necessary. The shots that we got of Chicago, we stole. We couldn't get the permits from Mayor Daley, the elder. So I said, look, man, we don't need no permits. We take a camera into Chicago. Who's gonna come and ask us for some paper? So we went in and we shot one scene on the L platform on 63rd and Cottage Grove, which is in the hood where I grew up and where I still live. How did we shoot it? We paid and went through the turnstile. And then we wanted some shots of the L moving, so we got on the next L that came along and went up to the front and pointed the camera out there and shot that. All the scenes in Chicago were theft. It's guerrilla cinema. And I don't see any reason why we should do anything else. If we're going to be outsiders, man, take advantage of being outside, okay? If you want to be a rich hoe, then go to Hollywood. If you want to say something true about black people, then do what we did. Raise the money from the black community and shoot what you want. Ivan's attorney, Tom Newsom, was a major, he and his brother, who was a professor at Toledo University, were the major fundraisers. For instance, I never raised a dime out of my hometown, Chicago. And I know some of the richest niggas in Chicago. Wouldn't touch it. You know, some of them I haven't spoken to since then. Tom and Dan, his brother, raised the money. And we put every bit of that money into shooting the film. And we raised about $850,000 from blacks. As I recall, UA put up completion funds, and it was less than $200,000. Black films ought to be about black people. They ought to have the same criteria as white films. Financed by, written by, produced by, directed by, distributed by, in theaters that we own if possible. I'm talking about an interdependent economy. I say interdependent because it would be impossible to just pull ourselves out of it.
Self-reliance.
What's that?
You're talking about self-reliance.
Self-reliance, yes.
So how do you
Which is what my elders preached to me when I was growing up. Now we're talking about integration. Now it's diversity. And the latest thing is reparations, which ain't nothing but begging for crumbs from the white man's table. And we ought to be about the business of building our own tables and baking our own bread. I want people to think. And out of thought, concerned action. You don't act first and then think. You think first and then act. That's why we were given brains. That's why we don't act instinctively. And when we do, we're wrong. Whichever way they go, I want them to think about what I've had to say. I'm not trying to recruit anybody. I'm not trying to proselytize. I'm not trying to convince anybody. I want to shake up the mind. I want people to look at that movie and go out of there thinking. And I think I've accomplished that purpose. I can sum it up in one word: crossover. Okay? When black artists were more concerned about attracting a white audience than entertaining the black audience, they stopped being entertainers and became hoes. Okay? Billie Holiday, Dizzy Gillespie, Miles Davis, they weren't concerned with the color of their audience. They knew who their audience was. If the white folks wanted to come in there and buy their records, they were welcome. But they were not playing for white folks. The bling blings are looking for a white audience. Okay? And I feel just like the entertainers and musicians that preceded me. I wouldn't give a damn if nobody white ever read my book. If they do, I want them to pay for it and get my royalties. And if they get something out of it, I say, fine. But my audience is not white. I don't write for black bourgeois intellectuals. I write for the people on the block where I live. Well, man, if you don't belong someplace, get the hell out. There's no excuse now for black people not to be making their own films. With modern technology, you can shoot a film that 10 years ago would have cost $10 million for less than a fraction of that. Now, why do they have to go through all of that pain, man? Are they masochistic or what? Are they hoping that one day they'll make a whole lot of money? You can make a film shoot it DV, digital, for a fraction of what you would. You can make a damn good film for $1 million. In fact, if somebody gave me $1 million, I'd shoot 3. If you want to work for white folks, take what they got to give you, put the money in the back and stop whining. And if it's painful, get out. You can't have it both ways. Once upon a time, they used to own slaves. Nowadays, they rent us. You can break the lease if you want to. I did. I don't know. White folks are not going to change. So some of us have to. And I'm sincerely disappointed in the activity of so-called leaders in our community. I think they've totally lost touch. They spend so much time with white folks trying to convince them to do the right thing that they don't spend enough time on a grassroots level where I live. And they don't know what the people down there are thinking. They don't know what they're feeling. And I'm not at all sure they care. I'm not at all sure they care. I feel a definite sense of elitism today. I don't believe that so-called leaders have any connection with the people, viscerally, intellectually, or otherwise. In fact, I think they're frightened of us. They are afraid of ordinary grassroots black people, yet they still pretend to speak for us. And I say us because that's where I am. They ever try to start a movement of the type before, okay, which was a mass movement of grassroots working class black people led by well-educated elite black people. And I make a distinction between elite and elitist. They can't come back anymore and ask the masses to demonstrate as they did before, as they did with King, as they did with Foreman, Huey, and other leaders. That was a grassroots movement, the leadership notwithstanding. I'm going to get the last laugh on all of those people, the whites and the blacks, who tried to break me. I've had comrades of mine, man, who were broken psychologically, okay? I know one who's a bag lady wandering around talking to herself. I know people who killed themselves. I know others who went crazy. But look at me, man. I'm healthy and happy and having a good time. And if I never made another film, look at the film I made.
Spook Who Sat by the Door changed my life. I saw it, I'm from Chicago. I saw it at the Woods Theater in Chicago. I love movies, and I remember, you know, going to see the Superfly, The Shaft, Willie Dynamite, and stuff like that. And then there's this movie called The Spook Who Sat by the Door. So I go in there, and it's like on a bill with 2 other movies. But something about this movie is real different to me. I don't know what it is, but it's like the theme of revolution, the theme of black people working together, making a difference, changing, taking control of their destiny. It affected me. I told everybody at school about it that Monday, and it was gone Tuesday. And it was literally in the theaters for a week. And it stayed in my head. I think part of the reason I'm a filmmaker and I'm a writer, director, producer, actor, all of that is because of the spook. Because there was a sense of, what if we took our destiny into our hands? What if we didn't take no? What if we tried to change the system? And I think that's what stayed into my spirit, my soul. Then all of a sudden I couldn't find the film. Then I become a filmmaker and I go, what happened to that film? And then I hear it's on, colleges are showing it to study, you know, this one film, and it made such an impact. And it always stayed in my head. And then finally, I got a bootleg copy. Somebody goes, hey man, in this video store on Melrose in LA, there's a copy of The Spook Who Sat by the Door. And I said, I gotta get it. And I remember going there, ordering like 4 copies, you know, and giving it to people as a Christmas present of like, this is what cinema, this is what you could call, you know, guerrilla cinema at its best. And that was my journey. So cut to now, I call Ivan Dixon. I go to a premiere. No. They're honoring Sidney Poitier, and Ivan Dixon was Sidney's stand-in and stuntman on The Defiant Ones and In the Heat of the Night. And at this tribute for Sidney, at this tribute for Ivan, Sidney's there. And so then we have this whole conversation, and I'm there because of Ivan, because I love Spook Who Sat by the Door. And so begins my journey again, now as an adult, with Spook Who Sat by the Door. The Miami Black Film Festival is a festival I've been hosting for like 8 years, and I talk with Tim and we say, hey, let's get the Spook down here. I'm gonna host this screening and then interview Sam. I had no idea what to expect. Sam Greenlee is a true revolutionary. I mean, he's 74 and he continues to speak his mind. He hasn't wavered. His heart, his soul is about change. For people of color to live up to their higher selves and not accept no for an answer. And I think that seed is what he planted in The Spook Who Sat by the Door. So when I look at the film and I see these performances and I listen to the dialogue, and the dialogue is rich and the situations are believable. And the real deep thing about it is the editor of Spook Who Sat by the Door is one of the biggest editors in Hollywood now, who edited Schindler's List, Jurassic Park, all of Minority Report, all of Steven Spielberg's films. Michael Kahn is the editor. So I was like, you know, going, oh my, you know, because you can still see that fine touch in the film. The only thing that I hope is that, and the reason I really love this film is that it would encourage other filmmakers to take chances. It would inspire. Sam was talking about, you know, black people in Hollywood, and I've been in Hollywood. I hope he wasn't talking about my ass. But it's like, I love the creative process, and I think it's about speaking your mind, taking chances, and you know, starting with Hollywood Shuffle, there is something too about doing it on your own. And so this film, I had heard all the war stories. They couldn't shoot in Chicago, and Mayor Richard Hatcher and Gary, Indiana said, you guys can come here, so they shot there. The actors, they were running out of money. And so when I think about Hollywood Shuffle, you know, and I think, you know, I had it hard, but then they had it 80 times harder. They've got, you know, a riot scene outside, and people are actually turning over police cars, and they got too excited, and they really got into the moment because of the time You know, we're talking a time of, I mean, times have changed, you know, I think, you know, things have been camouflaged more, but a time where people were really trying to find an identity. You know, James Brown, black is beautiful, say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. So there's a lot going on, and even in the film, the themes are there. I mean, so it's a very smart film. It's written on a lot of different levels. It's a very funny film. You know, I mean, sometimes people look and they go, well, this is a film about serious revolution. And then you got the one character in there who was a real gang member in the Cobras who talks about how, you know, he was so light-skinned and they did that whole scam of they have to pass. And he was like, I'm blacker than you, man. And it's really dealing with some real themes of, you know, how black are you? How committed are you? The concept of, could we work together? Could we teach each other? I think what it planted in me was the seed of anything is possible, so that when I began my journey with Hollywood Shuffle and I said, hey, I never directed a movie before, but I've auditioned with all you actors and you seem like a really good actor, would you work with me? I don't know anything about a camera, but I want it lit like this. And you know, so that seed for me really started there. So this movie, I want a lot of people to see it because I think it's one of those hidden treasures that the audience, you know, some knew about the book, and there's a whole generation that is caught up in the bling bling, that is caught up in, it's all about the money, it's not about a sense of community. And now there are no communities, not really, because they don't look each child, you know, it takes a village to raise a community, and it's like, it's not that way anymore. Now everybody's off into some different stuff. And this film is about a sense of community and protecting that community and developing that community. Me being that little kid in the ghetto, seeing that movie, and I'm just there going, wow, wow. And then you kind of go, it planted a seed, and it's like a waterfall starts with a single drop. I became that drop in the middle of the ghetto going, I'm gonna make movies. I'm gonna control the images. And the film Spook has been, you know, really, you know, responsible for my growth as an artist. And I'm excited about seeing the, you know, the restoration of the film, you know, I mean, because again, you know, it's done with other movies, and this is the first time I think a film of color has gone through the process and really been, you know, nurtured, I'll put it like that, you know, I mean, to take the negative and to look at it and clean it up so that people can see it. And it's an absolutely wonderful film. The film made a statement, and here we are 30 years later, and that statement is still effective, you know, and it's like a groundswell. It's always going to be around because film is for life. And the theme is, no one has tackled that theme to this day. You know, I say, except for, you know, Blacklisted, where I say, okay, we're gonna deal with kind of a bit of a revolution here and what happens, and you might not like these characters, you know, it's a dark character for me to play a killer, but again, when I think about Lawrence Cook in, you know, Spook, oh man, he's a brilliant cat, and he just gets caught up in it, and he brings the whole machine with him, and he causes a revolution.